Wilderness camping in Rocky Mountain National Park, North Inlet area. On September 4th and 5th, 2021, we camped at the North Inlet Junction. There's a total of 3 campsites in this area. We chose the second one as it was closest to the stream and the privy, a pool with a view. The campsite was about 7.5 miles with 1,000 feet of elevation gain from the North Inlet trailhead on the Grand Lake side of Rocky Mountain National Park. Wilderness camping in Rocky Mountain National Park requires a permit which must be reserved well in advance. This year it was the email lottery was the way to get your permits. Check with the Rocky Mountain National Park Wilderness Office for more information on backcountry permits. Spare canisters are required. Pack out everything that you bring in. Filter or boil untreated water. Day 1, we arrived at the campsite around 1 p.m., set up camp, had a snack, and then got our day packs ready to hike. Right next to our campsite was North Inlet Falls. We stopped and admired the falls with the mountain view for a little bit. Then we headed up on the Lake Nanita Trail. Hiked up a well-maintained trail through some steep switchbacks up to Lake Nakoni, which was only a couple miles away from the campsite. Enjoyed the views there. There was no wind and also no other hikers around, which was pretty awesome. From Lake Nakoni, we made our way up to Lake Nanita. It's the same elevation as Nakoni, but you do go up and then back down. That's about a mile away from Lake Nakoni. I personally liked Lake Nanita better out of the two, but both are pretty awesome. There's a trail that goes along up Lake Nanita a little longer, but due to lack of daylight, we didn't have time to check it out. If anyone takes that trail up, let me know. Send me some pictures. I'd love to see what it looks like above that lake. We had other plans in mind. We wanted to head up Pettingill Lake, so we headed back to Lake Nakoni, went up the saddle of the unnamed peak on the north side of the lake. It's about 200 to 300 feet of elevation gain. And then we dropped down about 600 feet on the other side of the saddle, trying to reach Pettingill Lake. It's on rough terrain. It's definitely a bushwhack. There is a little bit of a social trail on the way up to the saddle, but on the way down, the social trail quickly disappears. We dropped down 600 feet. We were about maybe 100 feet above Pettingill Lake, but we did cliff out. If we had more time, we could have made our way down to the lake, but we only had an hour and a half of daylight left, and we wanted to get back to camp to cook dinner and blow up our mattresses and pillows and stuff. Got back to camp, cooked dinner, stoves only, ate dinner real quick, and went to bed. Day 1 was 17.6 miles with about 4,000 feet of total elevation gain. On day 2, we woke up at first light and hiked towards Ptarmigan Creek, which is about a mile from our campsite. Our target was Bench Lake, and everything from here on out is a bushwhack with maybe a social trail, but in most cases there is no trail at all. The hike up Ptarmigan Creek went through a burn zone, which means that burnt trees and rocks have a lot better chance of moving and sliding and rolling downhill when you're hiking up the incline. I might as well call this a climb because it was a climb up Ptarmigan Creek. There's a series of cascades, also called War Dance Falls, that we had to stay relatively close to make our way up to Bench Lake. Lots of tree hopping and bushwhacking and cliffs that cliff out next to the creek, but eventually we did make it up to Bench Lake. Bench Lake lies at about 10,000 feet at the end of one of the most remote and unvisited valleys in Rocky Mountain National Park. We hung out at the shore of Bench Lake for a little bit before skirting off to the east side of it and making our way further into the valley. At this point of the hike, we had a better chance of seeing a moose or an elk rather than another human. Once we left Bench Lake, it was navigating down the creek with some creek crossings, wet meadows, down trees, and up and down some rocks. There were remnants of an old social trail, but the social trail never lasted more than 100 feet. I'm thinking back in the day, there was a real maintained trail back here as we ran into a sign that looked like it was several decades old. Ptarmigan Lake was our next destination. We followed the drainage from the lake up about a mile, and at this point of the hike, it was just continuing to follow the creek up a very steep and unstable climb across very treacherous terrain. Eventually, we arrived at a beautiful unnamed pond. Took a couple pictures there, had a water break, then continued to boulder hop up to Ptarmigan Lake. Ptarmigan Lake was amazing. The scenery was amazing. Very remote. Of course, there was no other people anywhere near us. Took some photos, took a break, and then decided if we wanted to continue on to the other lakes. We had only been hiking for about 3.5, 4 hours, and we both felt good, and we made it this far. So our next destination was an unnamed lake called Wonderland Lake. To get there, we hiked back down to the unnamed pond and stayed as close to the mountain bridge as we could, making sure not to lose too much elevation, pass a few other unnamed ponds, and then make a very short climb up to Wonderland Lake. This lake was a little over a half mile away from Ptarmigan Lake, and navigating through the terrain wasn't that bad at all since there wasn't much elevation gain. Wonderland Lake is unofficially named, but it is an officially awesome lake to visit. Took some pictures, shot some clips, and then we were on to our next destination, our final destination of the day. From Wonderland Lake, we decided just to go as straightforward as we could towards Snowdrift Lake. The only route information on this I've ever been able to find was in the Lisa Foster book, and this route said to drop in elevation and then kind of climb back up. We didn't do any of that. We aimed straight for the lake, climbed up some class 2 rock, passed another few unnamed ponds. These unnamed ponds and tarns are everywhere in this valley, and in about a quarter mile we reached Snowdrift Lake. We wound up kind of on the northeast side of Snowdrift Lake, which was cool because it kind of forced us to circle back down to the mouth of the lake before we made our final descent of the day. Snowdrift Lake was pretty amazing. It's an awesome lake. This entire valley was just amazing. It's a very tough hike, very tough bushwhacking. The total hike was over 3,000 feet of elevation gain and about 10 miles round trip from the campsite. This 10 miles of hiking though was the hardest 10 miles I've ever done. Even harder than hitting up Mount Shabno and Mount Tabawatch, 2 Colorado 14ers. Overall, the North Inlet area is very beautiful. The burn scars throughout the trail from the 2020 East Troublesome Fire is kind of saddening to see, but you can see that life all around is rebounding. There are several backcountry camping sites in this area, so if you want to explore this area, you have a good shot of landing a permit when permits do go live. We also saw several moose and elk on this hike. If you have any questions about camping in this area or how to reach some of these less traveled lakes, please leave a comment below and I'll try my best to get back to you as soon as possible. If you haven't already, check out the short film that I made on this hike. But that's gonna wrap things up for me. Until the next hike, I'm Dave Spates, hiking, adventure, photography.